tonight we're doing 6-4 binomials containing radicals. And if you look here, I have two factors, and we are just going to be multiplying. So when you're multiplying two factors, you have to FOIL. Four times 3 is 12, and 4 times 2 radical 7. You multiply 4 times 2, the number's on the outside of the radical, which is 8, and you don't have anything to multiply radical 7 by, so it's just radical 7. You're going to multiply 1 times 3, which is 3, with the radical 7, and here we have 1 times 2, which is 2, and 7 times 7, which is 49. So if you notice, you multiply the numbers on the outside together and the numbers on the inside of the square root together. So now we're going to combine like terms. I have 12, and when we have a common square root, so I have 8 plus 3 is 11. And I have 2, and the square root of 49 is 7. So I know that 2 times 7 is 14. And now I can add 12 plus 14 together, and I get 26 plus 11 radical 7. And you can't add those together because they are not common denominators. B is 2 square root of 3 minus radical 6 squared. So whenever you have it squared, you have to write it twice. Remember, you're not allowed to distribute the 2 because there's a negative here, or a subtraction sign, however you want to think of it. And you have to FOIL these. So you have 2 times 2, which is 4, and 3 times 3, which is 9. Here I have 2 times the negative 1, which is negative 2, and 3 times negative 6, which is, just radical 6, which is 18. Here we have negative 1 times 2, which is negative 2, and 6 times 3, which is 18. And then I have a negative 1 times a negative 1, which is a positive 1. And 6 times 6 is 36. I'm going to have 4, and the square root of 9 is 3. And when I combine like terms here, I have negative 2, and negative 2 is 4, square root of 18. Plus, and we know the square root of 36 is 6. We have 12, 4 times 3, and we're going to need to break up 18 and see if we can find partners of 18 here, or buddies of 18. So 9 and 2, and 3 and 3. So you know you're going to bring down the 12, and if you want, actually, it could be easier for you. If you want, you can add 12 and 6 together, and when you do that, you get 18. And here I have I'm breaking up radical 18, so I get 3 with a square root of 2 left over. And you still have the negative 4 though, because this right here, I'll highlight it, the square root of 18 is this answer. And the 4 is still on the outside, that doesn't go away. So you have to have negative 4 times 3, which is negative 12, square root of 2, when I still have the 18. Can't subtract them, so that is your answer. C, I have 4 radical 5 plus 3 square root of 2, 4 minus square root of 5 minus 3 square root of 2. If you notice, that looks weird. This is a radical, sorry. Make sure you know that that's 4 radical 5 minus 3 radical 2. I might have said negative, but make sure you know that that's a square root. I'll just erase it, it looks better. Okay, So if you notice, these are exactly the same problem, except for this is a plus and this is a minus. So what you can do is, well, I'll FOIL it the long way first, and then I'll show you that the middle terms are always going to drop off when it's exactly the same, but plus or minus, plus and minus. So 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times negative 3 is negative, 12. And 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 4 is 12. And 2 times 5 is 10. And then you have 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9. 2 times 2, which is 4. And if you notice, these are going to cancel. And that's what I'm talking about. Your middle terms are going to cancel. So if you want, you can always just multiply the first and the last together, and you're done if they're exactly the same but different signs. Or you can just FOIL the whole thing, but I'm just trying to teach you a shortcut. Square root of 25 is 5, and negative 9 times 2 here. So we have negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. 16 times 5 is 80. And 80 minus 18 is 62. Sample number 2. I have 3 plus radical 5 over 3 minus radical 5. If you notice, I have a radical in the denominator, and I'm not allowed to have that. And so you normally multiply by radical 5 to the top and the bottom to get rid of it. However, it's connected by this minus sign, so you have to think of it as the whole thing together. So what you do is you multiply by what's called the conjugate. And the conjugate is just exactly the same thing that's on the bottom, but you're going to change the signs. So since this is a minus, this is now a plus. And if this was a plus, then this would have to be a minus. So you just change the sign, and you're going to go ahead and FOIL the top and FOIL the bottom. So on top, I'm going to write this down here. And we're going to FOIL it. I have 3 times 3 is 9. This is going to be 3 square root of 5 plus 3 square root of 5. 5 times 5 is 25. Those are like terms. I have 9 plus 3 plus 3 is 6 radical 5. Plus, this is just 5, so you have 9 plus 5 is 14 plus 6 square root of 5. That's the top answer. Now let's look at the denominator. You're going to have to FOIL those too. So I have 3 minus radical 5 and 3 plus radical 5. Remember, when they're the same terms but just opposite signs, you only have to multiply the first and the last. So you have 3 times 3 is 9, and I'm going to have plus 3, sorry, I highlighted the wrong one. It has to be these two, because these are the last terms in the equation. So here's the first, and here's the last terms. And I'm looking in the front of the parentheses. So 5 times 5 is 25, but you have a negative, so it's going to be negative square root of 25. So you're going to have 9 minus 5, which is 4. So now your denominator is 4. So you have 14 plus 6 square root of 5 over 4. Now, when you have this equation right here, you can't add 14 plus 6 because they're not like square roots. So you're going to look at this part right here. It looks like a triangle. There's 3 terms in it. And you're going to ask yourself, what goes into 14, 6, and 4? Okay, because you have to reduce them. So you know that 2 can go into all of them. So 2 goes into 14 7 times, and 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 4 twice. And so this is your answer reduced. Example number 3. It says if, and this is the last one, if f of x equals x plus 1 over x, and it tells you that f equals radical 3 plus 2. So we've done these before where it said like you have f of x and it gives you that f of whatever, like f of 5, and you have to plug in 5 for x. Well, here instead of a number, we have a radical plus 2. So it's like my x equaling radical 3 plus 2. And you're going to have to substitute that in for each of those x's. So if I did that, I would have radical 3 plus 2 plus this 1 over radical 3 plus 2 to equal this denominator. You know that we can just combine like terms here, so it's radical 3 plus 3 over radical 3 plus 2. And unfortunately, we can't have a square root in the denominator, and it's connected by this plus sign, so you have to multiply by the conjugate. So when you do that, you're going to FOIL the top, and you're going to FOIL the bottom. So I'll write it over here. I have radical 3 plus 3 and radical 3 minus 2. I have to FOIL that one first. I have radical 3 times radical 3 is radical 9. Square root of 9 is just 3. Here I have negative 2 radical 3. Here I have plus 3 radical 3. And here I have negative 6. I can combine these two because they're like terms, and I can combine these because they're like terms. So I'm going to have 3 minus 6 is negative 3, and 3 minus 2 is positive 3 radical 3. So this is the top part of my fraction. Then I look here and I have to FOIL the denominator. So I have the first times the last, and I only have to do the first times the last because again, they're the same terms but opposite signs. So I'm going to have 3 times 3, which is 9. Square root of 9 is just 3. And 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So I get a negative 1 as my denominator. So when I look at this, I have negative 3 plus 3 radical 3 on top and a negative 1 on the bottom. You need to distribute that sign to the negative 3 and the 3. Because when you look at this, you can split it up and you could reduce these. These would become a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So now my final answer is 3 minus 3 radical 3. Before we end, I just want to check something to make sure that I didn't write it wrong. And it looks like here, if you could just, sorry about the change, but make sure in your notes that remember it's the last term. I realized I did the first, I was thinking last on the last, but it's the last 2 in the parentheses. So make sure that those are the 2 that you're looking at.